Hello and welcome to Rich, Simple, Human. I'm Lindsey Francis, and today I'm sitting down with Grace Fodor. She is the founder of Studio 10 Beauty, and we have got a very exciting conversation to have about all things pro-age and so much more. Grace, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Very excited to be here and have this conversation.
Grace, before we started, I admitted to you that in preparing for this interview, the longer I spent looking at your work, the more questions I had for you and the more diverse the conversation became. So my original script went out the window about 3 days ago, and I'm now on round 4. So let's see where this goes today. But you and I both have a heart for women, and we're both massively motivated to talk and speak up about what happens in midlife and some of the very unique challenges that we face. Grace, you founded a business on this concept. Would you mind just giving us a quick overview about how it happened and how you've got to this point now here in time?
Yeah, so my background was in beauty and makeup. And in my late 40s, early 50s, I woke up one morning and thought, oh, I don't use the same skincare as I did in my 20s. So why am I using the same makeup? Because our skin is different, our needs are different, how makeup product interacts with skin is different. So I thought, actually, I want products formulated for grown-up skin, like grown-up makeup, more mature skin. But then when I started to look behind it, and I always say sort of Studio 10's more than skin deep, what I was really interested in was how women use makeup, how they feel, what they feel around makeup. So intimidated, overwhelmed, too many products, can't be bothered, all that sort of stuff, or using the same products as they did in their 20s, not moving their makeup on. But what I was really interested in was how women feel. And, being that age myself, my understanding of beauty. When I look in the mirror, when I looked in the mirror, do I see beauty looking back at me? No. What I see is all these negative, oh, look at my lines and wrinkles. Oh, I look so tired. And when I started to sort of delve a little bit more and speak more to more and more women, what I realized is beauty, right? The value, when we think about beauty, how we define beauty, it's always linked to youth, right? So beauty isn't ageless, beauty is youth. And what was happening, and if you look at the beauty industry, the fashion industry, the music and the music industry, everything to do with beauty. And what's interesting about that is so much of a woman's value and currency traditionally has been around beauty, right? So maybe that's an evolutionary thing, is that, because we want to attract a mate. And then what happens is that value, that currency diminishes as we age. But interestingly, not with men. So, you take a George Clooney, he's Silver Fox, gravitas. And so that it doesn't diminish. Beauty doesn't diminish in men. And also ability doesn't. So that piece was quite interesting. And the word that came up all the time, it's like all roads led to feeling invisible. So society makes us feel invisible. We in turn feel invisible, and then we own that invisibility. So for me, looking at makeup then as a medium, it's a very powerful medium, A, to transform, but B, it's a confidence boost. And I always give this as an example. When you get ready to go out and you've got some makeup on, you might have some jewelry, a new outfit, you've done your hair, you might have heels on, whatever it is, but you're ready to go out, you look in the mirror and you act so differently. You go, oh, I'm looking so good. I've got this. That feeling of feeling $1 million, looking in the mirror and liking what you see, that confidence, that shoulders go up, head high, or, you are no different the person you were 2 hours before. That's how powerful it is. Those little things that we can do to make ourselves feel more confident. So that was the piece that I was really, really interested in. And then it was pro-age, not anti-age. And also the rhetoric, the narrative, anti-aging, anti-wrinkle, 10 years younger, 20 years younger, you know, and wonder why so many women don't feel beautiful. And that don't feel, if you look in the mirror and you don't see the beauty and you don't feel beautiful, then that eats away, doesn't it? It erodes your confidence, your self-worth, your value. And for me, that was why Studio 10 was born, was to, you know, create products that are really good for mature skin, but also empower women to look in the mirror and see the beauty, celebrate their age, wear it loudly, wear it proudly, be
Great.
seen, be heard.
I absolutely love those two themes, being invisible and pro-age, not anti-age, because a lot of the messaging that we're picking up as women is totally subconscious. We're not going out there and consciously listening to this negativity. It's just being dripped in through every channel. And of course, with the expansion of the digital age, we're hearing this on all angles, and it's really, really bad for
You're
us.
hearing it and you're seeing it. I mean, I've seen, it is changing. You know, I've seen adverts for an anti-wrinkle cream, which has a 25-year-old model in it. You know, or we're not represented in the ads by the very brands trying to sell to us. That is changing. We weren't represented on catwalks. There is a shift and it's changing. But all of those subliminal, subconscious messages, whether it's visual, whether it's, we're absorbing, and also even the language, like over the hill, you know, they're negative. They're not positive. They're not positive. Even the rhetoric's not positive.
No, and I also see a lot of my clients sort of struggling with the concept of menopause being quite a negative experience. Well, it's the menopause. It almost feels like it's been turned on us. And especially if you ever hear a man, well, you know, it's the menopause. They're sort
Yeah.
of coming to that age. And that feels like something that should have been really positive, and recognizing a different stage hasn't been a celebration of age and wisdom, but just another excuse to sort of write yourself off.
Yeah, there is.
Be done with it.
It is interesting because there is so much about menopause, and I think it's a positive because it is another major hormonal change that women go through. And you know, there are physical, there are emotional, there are a number of different no, I don't think the word symptoms, but different ways that the menopause impact us physically, mentally, emotionally, everything, right? So I think it's been good to have that conversation, to get it out there. But I do fear that there is so much about menopause now, and it's always aligned with the negative.
Yeah. Yeah, I was out with 10 girlfriends last night. It's very unusual that that happens. And we actually got ready. We were away, so we got ready together. And people have, you know, got their HRT gel out and they're slapping on the testosterone, and they're looking to recapture their youth and their energy levels from past days. And I thought, gosh, this is really odd. I'm not sure that's what we were kind of aiming for here. We can't go back, but we just have to recreate. And there's this sort of this lost yearning for what was, and what pharmaceuticals
I
can bring
think,
back.
yeah, yeah, it's the same with, you know, putting your best face forward, right? Or dyeing your hair, or using a cream that helps with wrinkles, or, you know, if you want to do Botox, or I kind of feel there's no right or wrong way to age. It doesn't mean you're trying to be 10, 20 years younger, because you're never going to be able to achieve that. But what it does mean is you're putting your best face forward. And when I look back, like, physically you change, you don't have the same energy levels, you don't have the same fitness levels, but I want to be high energy. I want to be strong. I want to. So, and I think that is completely achievable, because I think I am now more fit than I was probably in my 30s, because I invest my time in fitness. So you can have high energy, but you've just got to work harder. You've
I
got to put
think
the time in,
you're
you've got
so
to
right.
work harder, and you have to commit down to like what you eat, what exercise are you doing, are you hydrated? And that for me is the difference, is I have to work at it. Whereas
The
in my
amount of
20s,
effort. I know. Well, as we said,
boys get away with so much.
teenage girls, you watch how quickly they can transition their fitness. Um, it's quite incredible. I want to see a bit of reframing, like you say, with pro age, because although we can be fitter and more energetic, it will be slightly different because times
Absolutely.
have changed. And I'd love to see people really looking in the mirror and embracing that, I'm getting older, wiser, that sort of wise sage type archetype. But I don't feel that that's what's happening. I feel people just sort of look in the mirror and think, oh, this is
I
rubbish.
know, but what's so interesting, that wisdom and sage and all of those really strong, powerful words, again, because something I'm quite mindful is ageism. Right, ageism exists, and for me, ageism is that last ism that we really need to tackle in society, right? And it is a positive, it's not positive, it's an accepted form of discrimination. So what's interesting about ageism, and especially in the workplace, it does exist for men and for women, but especially for women. So in the workplace, a man in his 60s, 70s, sitting on a board, you know, he's sage, this wisdom, this gravitas, this kudos, this experience, this expertise, it's all positive, but it's not the same for women.
No.
Like, we lose that. And we don't actually. We are just as wise. We have as much experience and expertise. And actually, one could argue that we bring other benefits into that boardroom or into the workplace. But again, it's that sort of outdated stereotype. And we should be embracing our wisdom. But I think when we've been conditioned, I'm work in progress, we've been conditioned to, when we look in the mirror, it's about identifying with a beauty standard. Whereas I don't think men look in the mirror and have that same benchmark to compare.
No, I don't think they do at all. But I was recently in a roundtable discussion about self-perception, and it was a mixed group of men and women. And we were actually asked, do we love ourselves? And what was interesting is as many women as men said, no, I don't think so. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. That self-acceptance, that self-worth, that inner sense of, oh, worthiness and value. It
Yeah,
isn't there in men either, if they're honest, which is a
yeah.
terrible thing.
Well, it is a terrible thing, and it's really sad, because that self-acceptance, that self-worth value, that self-love, that's the most important thing, right? And that's the most important thing. That's the foundation, that's the bedrock of living a happy, fulfilled life. And interestingly, my mum and dad both had that. They both had it. Their levels of self-acceptance was so high, and they were so at peace with themselves and their life. I can't explain it, and I always sort of envied that.
Do you know where that came from, Grace?
I They definitely didn't have it as, my mum was religious, so she that was a foundation for her in terms of what's important in life, if that makes sense. And it gave her a real sense of sort of purpose. Yeah, they were just really grounded. And I think part of it is they didn't buy into, they were ambitious, they were successful, they provided, but there was no grandeur. They didn't feel they needed to have, all the materialistic, that wasn't important to them. What was really important to them was their emotional connections.
Mhm.
The people around them, their emotional connections, family. They both were they loved, obsessed with gardening. So out in nature, gardening. They had a garden, they had 2 allotments. It was quite a physical, it brought them so much pleasure. It was a simplicity. And those elements are free. Does that make sense? So you don't have to have, to spend time in the garden, or, they took such pleasure. Like, I don't know, it's grounded.
It's beautiful to hear you say that, because of course the clue is in the name of the podcast, Rich, Simple Human. And the richness is in the simplicity of the things we simply can't buy.
100%.
What comes up in my clinic and my practice time and time again is, what can I purchase? What can I buy? What supplements? What tools? And I'm a great one for buying every, we were just talking about the LED face mask. I mean, I buy every piece of kit under the sun. It drives my husband nuts, because we're always looking for that one purchase that's going to change everything. And it simply doesn't work that way. It is the rich simplicity of being human and being yourself that delivers exactly what you
Also, as well, my parents they didn't use external props to give them value in the way that I did. Definitely, like in my 20s into my 30s, I was hugely ambitious because I wanted status. I was hugely ambitious because I wanted to be wealthy, be rich. I wanted the big house, I wanted the smile, I wanted the fancy holidays, all that sort of stuff, because it was feeding probably an insecurity. And those external props do not ever make you feel valuable, successful. Like, you have to do that from within. And I think they just had it. They had it internally.
Yeah.
So they were never, and the other part of that is they never compared themselves to anybody else, because and I spent my whole 20s doing that. So however successful I was, there was someone who is more successful. Whatever house I had, there was someone who had a bigger house, a better car, a better body, blah, blah. This whole list of things that were bigger, better, stronger. And if you use the external to define your sense of value and your worth, you are never, ever going to have that true sense of self-acceptance and love.
Absolutely. That was
Just,
beautifully put. Security, significance, and acceptance is definitely an inside job. Grace,
yeah.
what keeps you motivated now?
Sorry, say that again.
What keeps you motivated now?
Okay, so I've got lots of things really sort of motivate me, and sometimes I don't feel motivated all of the time. There's a real difference, so I have to work at it. So I am motivated to be fit, to be healthy, and to be strong. Next year I'm going to be 60, and then 70, and then 80. So I'm investing in my future years because I physically want to be fit and able and strong. So I'm motivated in terms of my fitness regime. I'm mindful about what I eat. I eat well. I eat very healthily. And what is good with that, there's a lot more education out there, and a lot more knowledge and resources and around nutrition. So I put a lot of focus into that. Sometimes it goes out the window. I've just been away for a few days, and I have to tell you, and I've been to Madeira, which is where my mother was from, and the cakes and the desserts and the sweets, so all of that, really, don't eat sugar, focus on my protein, but all went out the window. Drank way too much red wine with my aunt, etc. But generally I'm really focused on that. Fitness is really important, hydration. So I'm motivated, but I don't always feel motivated to do it, and it's hard. So you've got to work at it. You've really got, and one thing I do really believe is you get out what you put in. Very motivated by the business because I want the business to be successful. I still have a lot of personal ambition. I'm really motivated by my purpose, which is this whole pro-age movement. And the validation comes, interestingly, not in my sales at the end of the month, but when I meet women, and I do, and actually I was on a panel and this lady came up to me and she said, I have to tell you, Grace, you have got me through the hardest times of my life. And I was overwhelmed by, and she literally started crying. She said, I've read your articles, and she'd been through a really acrimonious, horrific divorce, and it broke her. And what was really interesting in that conversation I had is when those things happen, women, and maybe this is a gross generalization, but certainly for her, and I know I've done that, is we take it on board that it's our fault. Right? So she said what I helped when reading the articles, the makeup, all that sort of stuff, was building her confidence and seeing the beauty that she had. And I thought it was so interesting because we take so much on our shoulders, don't we? So
Me
that
too.
really motivates me. And the other thing that really motivates me is this whole idea around what is beauty, challenging those outdated stereotypes, seeing beauty for what it really is and not having it associated with youth or perfectionism or, these terrible, unattainable Instagram views of what beauty is. I'm really motivated about empowering women, not just in midlife, but the younger generation. I've got a 25-year-old, I've got a 22-year-old, I've got an 18-year-old, I've got 3 stepdaughters, and how they see themselves fundamentally when they look in the mirror, the first thing they look at is, am I beautiful? And that I'm motivated to change that shift. So they always see the beauty. And I do think beauty comes from within. And when a woman walks into the room and she's really confident, she's got a confidence, not an arrogance, but a confidence. She's walking with her head high. Nobody thinks about the way that she looks. What really transcends is that confidence.
Yeah.
And that is beautiful.
You've got very powerful messaging, Grace, and I'm delighted that that lady shared that with you in that moment, because when I was doing my research, your messaging about pro-age, confidence, and not allowing this invisibility, this imposter syndrome, not quite the same thing, but not allowing that to be entertained in your thought patterns is so, so important. Grace, can you just talk us through, for those of you people that are listening who are thinking, well, they're talking about the inside world, but they're actually talking about a product that goes on the outside of our bodies. I know that it's a slightly nuanced conversation. Just explain how that works, because it's so important.
It is so nuanced, but and there's been loads of research studies, if you look good on the outside, you feel good on the inside, right? So I always use this as an example, and we've all done it. When we get ready to go out, we do our hair, we put on some makeup, you might have a new outfit, jewelry, whatever it is. You look in the mirror and you go, oh, I'm rocking this look. Like you feel, not only do you look, but you feel $1 million. And you go out and, it might be wearing heels, but you physically, you're more confident, right? Your head's high, you are no different the person you were 2 hours before you're getting ready. So for me, that external is a very powerful tool that we can use, makeup, hair. And I think what's interesting is not only does it make you feel different about yourself, I think it's also tied into, I think you said earlier that so many women go, oh, just can't be bothered, right? Oh, it doesn't matter, I'm 50, I'm 60, or whatever. But actually, I think what's tied into that is your it's hard to explain it, but it's part of self-care is self-love. And I didn't coin this phrase because it's L'Oreal, but because you're worth it.
Yeah.
Like, put a bit of time and effort into yourself because you are worth it. So the interplay of the external and the internal, I think, is much, much closer than we give it credit.
We talk a lot nowadays about attention and energy being our only currency, because, of course, as soon as our attention is captured by anything on the internet, they've stolen our attention. We're beginning to see it as
Oh,
a currency. When we, to
mm,
echo what you've just said, when we pay attention to ourselves, we give ourselves energetic attention. I think that's where the beauty of makeup, of brushing your hair, of trying a new product begins to make you feel, like you say, better, because
yeah,
you've actually given yourself attention. And
yeah,
I see women who sort of say to me, well, Lindsey, I'm not really worth it, or they don't feel worthy, and they sort of just wither up a little bit, and they're not wearing any makeup anymore. They're perhaps not buying any new clothes. I mean, there's obviously the other extreme, Grace, but there are both sides to the camp, aren't there?
yeah,
There's women that look like they've been in the salon all day, have had, multiple surgeries or whatever, and they're still not happy on the inside. And then there's the
yeah,
other camp where people sort of give up, and you begin to think, gosh, we do, not losing our looks, but we always feel a bit better with a bit of blusher on, or we might put a bit of lipstick on. And I'm fascinated to see what works for people. It's a very unique individual conversation, but your products make it so much easier to navigate feeling and looking a little bit better with makeup, which is
yeah.
which is
And I
tremendous.
think the thing about makeup as well is, like, makeup traditionally is very much about fashion. It's like fashion, get the look, catwalk, celebrity. It's about lots of different looks, day to night, blah, blah, blah. That's not what Studio 10's about. I always say we're not a makeup brand, and people sort of look at me a bit oddly. We use the medium of makeup to give ourselves a little boost, right? To do a job of work. So I always, like, as an example, if you wake up in the morning feeling tired, absolutely exhausted, and you know what? You look in the mirror and you look exhausted, you've got dark circles, it's going to make you feel even more tired, right? When you go out into the world, people can go, oh, you okay? You're not feeling very well. Or it's all a negative spiral. So, you know, instantly with a little bit of under eye concealer, you can cover up those dark circles. So it's not so much about looking 10 years younger, and it's about putting your best face forward. And I always say this, it's the confidence that you wear on your face, and it just a little pick me up and a little boost, because when you catch yourself in the mirror, if you don't look tired, absolute fact, you will not feel as tired.
No, and I think there is something about what we tell ourselves. Our body listens to what we're saying, and there's some
Yeah,
amazing research out there about when we actually speak out our emotions, our body listens, and it actually relaxes itself. That's why talk therapy has been so popular. Why
yeah,
sophrology as a mind-body therapy is, as far as I'm concerned, far more effective. But it is so, so important that we do tell ourselves how we want to feel, and we get the body to come along with us. We also need to listen to the body. But I think what you've just described there is exactly that process where we say, do you know what? I didn't have the best night's sleep, but I'm going to get through the day, and this is going to make me feel a little bit better. Grace, can I
yeah,
ask you?
sure. But that actually is the power of almost affirmations,
Absolutely.
because I've read so much, and I think I've got it up here. This is an affirmation that I've got, but here, you are what you think. What you think is what you feel. And I
Yes.
listened to a brilliant TED talk, and it was all about. She was ex-Harvard, and she was talking about feelings, and our understanding is those feelings, we feel those, we feel. And she was saying, actually, there is a direct relationship. You think what you feel. So if you reprogram the thinking, you can actually talk yourself into feeling completely different. And that's where you've got your positive rhetoric and your negative mindset and that sort of stuff. and that's where affirmations come in. But again, I sometimes wonder, and you're probably the best person to ask, is I do wonder whether, I don't know if it's women or whether it's humans, whether we naturally have a negative bias. And I think that negative bias is around fear, because it's part of our survival instinct. It keeps us safe.
Of
But
course.
that and fear drives so much, doesn't it?
Well, it has to, because it's an evolutionary process, because we're prey animals. And if we're not on red alert all times, we could be eaten by bears. The problem is we're no longer being eaten by bears, we're being eaten by the internet, and we can't turn the internet off. So we've
Yeah,
got a predator, a subconscious predator in our midst that we simply don't have any defense against. And that's where personal boundaries, digital detox, being
yeah,
creative,
yeah,
these are such important tools that we mustn't lose. And especially with the dawn of AI, and I've talked to you about, I use biometric data and I track all my clients' stats. It's so important that we look at the data, but we also allow our intuition to
yeah,
come and develop through that. It's not either or. The only thing we have left in our true power is our consciousness, and we
yeah.
must protect that. It's so important. Grace, I wanted to ask you about creativity, because when I choose some jewelry or I choose an outfit, I begin to realize how important being creative is to me. And I'm not an artist. I'm obviously a therapist, and I do sort of this sort of work with people, and that's very much in the mind and the body. But creativity is what makes us human. And I wonder if that's probably the secret to the way that makeup helps us feel different.
Yeah, do you know, is it creativity, or is it, yeah, maybe it is creativity, because um I think the creativity is linked to authenticity,
Mm.
and is linked to um self, um not representation, but in terms of creativity, right? So many of us, that's why we pick up a magazine, we're on Instagram, right? So they talk about being a victim of fashion, or trends come in and then we all rush to a store and we get all the same clothes, right? So that for me is about not being truly authentic, and self-expression,
Mm.
right? So if you have self-expression, therefore you have your own sense of creativity and sense of self, that then you are your most authentic. So that for me is where the creativity comes from. Be inspired, but try as much as you can not to fit an ideal. Try and really find your own sense of expression, then the creativity. And with that comes, there's so many, if you're over the age of 40, if you can't have long hair, you can't wear a short skirt or shorts, you can't do this, you can't do that. Again, it's almost like these sort of rules of what we can and can't do. That eats away, doesn't it? It erodes any sense of expression, self-expression, any sense of creativity, and therefore, again, eats away at your sense of authenticity and that
Yeah.
real sense of agency. So for me, and that's where confidence, and I love it, when people, I've got a girlfriend of mine, I absolutely adore her. She dyes her hair loads of different colors. She wears every color under the sun. She's an artist, and she just owns it, and she's so confident with it. Real sense of agency. That's the piece of the creativity. And do what you want to do. There's no right or wrong. Wear what you want, do what you want to do,
And
and
I
try
think
and
that's
find.
the part, isn't it, when women do get a little bit older, where they do begin to be unapologetic.
Yeah,
And I love that. But I think there's that, like you said earlier when we were prepping for the show, there's two sides to that coin. There's the unapologetic, and then there's that sort of other bit that doesn't sometimes align. And it's so complex, but it's so fascinating. Fascinating
yeah. It
conversation.
is really complex. I just think those like empowering words, be seen, be heard, don't be invisible, be invincible. Yeah. Don't celebrate your age, wear it loudly, wear it proudly. They're almost like affirmations, aren't you? Because you're reprogramming. And I love the word unapologetic.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
And not letting age define you. I can't do this because, I'm too old, or I never get that job, or I don't have the energy. And it's all negative. We got to stop that negative rhetoric, and no one can do that for you. You have to do it. And I know I sound as though I've got it all sussed, and I really haven't. There are times I wake up in the morning, I'm exhausted, I feel my age, I feel all these different things. It's a negative. I sometimes wonder, how am I going to get through the day? And am I too old really to be, running a business? All this sort of stuff. And I have to work. And I have to say to myself, a lot of that is conditioning that I've bought into and that is around me. It's still around me. And I have to go, no, I'm going to not take that on board. But it takes energy, which is why it takes commitment, it takes energy, it takes strength, and it takes resilience, which is why for me, making sure the fundamentals of my physical health is so important. So if I eat well, it helps balance my hormones and my mood. If I sleep well, it helps with mood and balance. If I go to the gym and I'm exercising, guess what? I get more energy. Guess what? I sleep much better. I get rid of the stress and anxiety. That has an impact. So for me, that's the bedrock and that's the foundation and they're physical to focus on, and then it sort of permeates up into, but it takes time, it takes hard work, and it takes commitment, and it's hard when we are so busy all of the time.
It is, but the outcomes and the rewards are so worth it. And you've just described the 5 pillars of wellbeing that are absolutely central to the method that I use: sleep, nutrition, hydration, relaxation, recovery, exercise, and purpose. We've got to get that dialed in, but we have to get it dialed in every day. Yes. It's a bit like going to the gym. You might go away on a boot camp, or you go away on a juicing retreat, or whatever crazy thing we've decided to do that month. You get great results, you come home, it goes away. You have to keep working at it. And that's where people, I find that, it's of course where coaching and support helps so much, because it's just embedding that daily habit. So it's like brushing your teeth. You just have to do it every day, or your teeth will fall out. And none of us do that.
And then it becomes part of your daily routine and habit that you're not actually consciously, because you're just doing it. So it takes less energy because you're just doing it. The thing that I find, and now there's a lot more knowledge and understanding, is those 5 pillars, you can't do one without the other. They are blended. Like serotonin. They say that 90% of the serotonin is produced in your gut, so your gut health. They are interlinked, which means as a sort of ecosystem, you've got to look at all of it. There's no point going, right, I'm going to go to the gym every day and I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and then eat terribly all day long. And what's interesting is, so it does take commitment, and it definitely takes energy, but like you said, the rewards are there. So when I'm in a positive cycle, the one thing, it's interesting because the number one thing, because yes, it's an ecosystem, but I kind of feel right at the center of it for me is sleep. Right? If I don't sleep, then everything goes pear-shaped, because guess what? I'm too tired. I don't want to go to the gym. So it's all those sort of things. So sleep's absolutely key. I think that regulates everything.
Yeah.
If I don't get good night's sleep, guess what? My body is drawn to sugar or carbohydrates because I just want that rush. Well, you're not sustaining any energy by doing that. Or I might drink 3 cups of coffee. So sleep's important. But for me, to get a good night's sleep, what sits right at the center for me personally is the exercise piece. because that's how I deal with stress and anxiety. So for me, I think the golden bullet, if that's the right phrase, is stress and anxiety. Because if you can manage that, the stress and anxiety drives your moods, your hormones, all of it. So, and I feel I have a lot of stress in being an entrepreneur, and so I go to the gym at the end of the day, not in the morning, because it physically removes me from my desk. Because that's the other thing you said about the internet being, this is my office.
Yeah.
Right. So I can be on 24/7. 24/7 I could work. Right. So that discipline. So for me, going to the gym at the end of the day removes me for an hour from my desk, from the office. Any stress, anxiety, I'm working through it, and I do a lot of weights, and I love it. I love going to the gym. I love exercise. I love going to the gym. So that breaks it down, gets rid of the stress. My cortisol levels are high, they come down, endorphins, all that sort of stuff. Come back home, I'm in a much more positive frame of mind. Guess what I want to do? I want to eat really well.
Yeah.
I'm not craving, I've got to have some chocolate, or worse, which for me, it's very easy at the end of a very long day to go, oh, just have a nice glass of wine.
Absolutely.
So that whole relationship around alcohol, how we use alcohol, I'm much more mindful, because at the end of a long day, and I love a glass of wine, and so, I just need a good glass of wine. So all of that, and breaking those habits, making them more positively. I eat well before, more protein rich, no sugars, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? I sleep much better. Then the whole cycle starts again.
And I think it's about finding what works for you, Grace, because I work with people with all different sorts of conditions, let's call them, and over exercising, over drinking, under sleeping. We've got to get it right for us. And I think when you found the balance, you found the formula, stick with it, and everything works so much better. Grace, can I ask you about By Women Built, please? Because this is something that I know is very close to your heart, and I'd really like to share that with listeners today.
Yeah. So By Women Built is a community of female founders, and it's a support network where female founders come together. They've got a peer-to-peer platform. So one thing which is interesting about women is we're collaborative, not competitive, right? So, and actually within that sort of matrix, all the things that are important, I do think personal connections really important, like having a network around you, those personal connections, those relationships, personally, but also professionally. So imagine, I think they've got something like 3,500, 4,000 female founders. We are a community, and we support, we collaborate, we might have questions, and it makes such a difference to running a business. But from an outside world perspective, their whole mantra is, if you believe in women, buy their brands, buy their products. And it's this whole idea of sort of conscious consumerism, in that every penny in your purse can make a difference. So it is a play on buy local, buy independent, buy women. So be really mindful of where you spend your money, and supporting that femme economy, supporting female founded businesses. And actually, a lot of those members I buy from. I buy their products, I buy their brands, because I want to support them. So yeah, it's very, really nice messaging.
And the power of community, Grace, of course, is that you and I came together because of our connection through the women's chapter. So again, very supportive network for women who are working in this space. And
I do think we need it. I think community and connection for women especially is so, so important. And I really feel it if I going through an extremely busy period, and I lose that connection, whether it's I'm not spending enough time talking to my girls, or I'm not spending enough time with my partner, or I'm not spending enough time seeing my friends, or, and then I start, if that emotional relationship connection for me is so important, it really impacts my emotional well-being.
Absolutely.
And then I'm like, okay, this is weighted, like those boundaries, this is wrong.
We are wired for connection, and we know that loneliness kills. We talked about it earlier with some of the isolated male type stories we're hearing. But I think also, Grace, it's important for us to go back to that evolutionary piece, that men are out hunting the deer. They're not collaborating. They're not, sitting down, shall we hunt? One is leading and the others are following. Let's charge, go. We go for the deer.
Yeah.
Women are not doing that. They are back in the cave, collaborating, communicating. That's how we've been designed. And of course we can work against that. But naturally we are much more in community with each other. It needs us. It really does.
And also that power of the community is we're also supporting, aren't we? So we're supporting, or we're being supported. And, there is a real sense of, I can't explain it, a sense of, I'm trying to think of what the sense of support is. It doesn't make you feel so isolated. It doesn't make you feel alone. It doesn't make you feel as vulnerable or exposed. And interestingly, the road I live in, we've got a road WhatsApp. There's 140 people on the WhatsApp in the road. And I love it. It's such, because if you need anything, or you want to get rid of something, you want to upcycle, recycle, I can't begin to tell you the sense of reassurance.
It's safety. It's basic psychological
That's the word.
And I think it's so important.
You feel safe in the world and not alone.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so triggering, of course, with the internet or Snapchat, and where kids can see where everybody is, because when you think you're being left out, you actually feel deeply psychologically vulnerable, physically vulnerable as well.
Yeah.
We are coming to the end of the show, Grace, and it's been an absolute joy to talk to you. If anybody would like to connect with you, Grace, can you just remind us, LinkedIn, obviously products available on the website. Can you just share the links with us whilst we're talking now?
Yeah, so we're on the website, www.studio10beauty.com. We're on Instagram, Studio10Makeup, Facebook, LinkedIn, Grace Fodor. We're very active. All those touch points, I'm on there all the time. My team's on there all the time. Every Wednesday I do a Grace's Musing. So if you go to our website, Aging with Grace is my magazine, so I'm always writing lots of articles, and so you can find us there.
Amazing. Grace, thank you so much. And if anybody would like to, of course, learn more about sophrology, dive into their subconscious, or up-level their consciousness, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or the website. Grace, it's been awesome talking to you. Until the next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.